In the basement archive of the British Museum, on a shelf in a climate-controlled storage room that the public never sees, sits a clay tablet roughly the size of a human palm. It is catalogued as BM 74329. It was excavated from the ancient city of Nippur in what is now central Iraq in 1893. Translated once by Oxford Assyriologist Stephen Langdon in 1912, and then quietly reclassified as a routine ritual incantation text, a designation that has kept serious researchers away from it for over a century. That reclassification was not disputed. It was not debated in journals. It simply happened, and the tablet disappeared into the archive under a label that made it uninteresting. But in 2009, a doctoral student at the University of Chicago named Dr. Mara Osei was cross-referencing Langdon's published translations against photographic records of the original tablets when she noticed something that should have been impossible to miss. 3 lines in the lower register of BM 74329 were absent from Langdon's published translation entirely, not marked as damaged, not flagged as uncertain, not noted as illegible, simply gone, as if those lines had never existed on the tablet at all. She mentioned it in a footnote, one footnote, in a dissertation that was never submitted for peer review. The following year, she left academia. The tablet has sat in that archive ever since. And those 3 lines have never been incorporated into any published translation. In 2017, BM 74329 was included in a broader British Museum digitization initiative that used reflectance transformation imaging, a photographic technique that captures surface detail invisible to the naked eye by processing images taken under dozens of different lighting angles. The RTI scan of the tablet's lower register is archived in the museum's digital collection. It reveals the 3 lines Langdon omitted, in full, undamaged, clearly impressed into the clay. The corrected transliteration produced by that scan has not been published. It has not been formally analyzed. It exists in a database that requires credentialed researcher access and a departmental review process that has been backlogged since 2020. What the RTI scan shows in those 3 lines is the reason this tablet matters. For decades, researchers who did engage with BM 74329 assumed its numerical content was ceremonial, the kind of sacred number repetition common in Mesopotamian liturgical texts, carrying theological weight rather than practical information. That assumption is not unreasonable. The majority of tablets recovered from Nippur are religious in character. Langdon himself specialized in Sumerian liturgy, classifying BM 74329 as ritual text placed it in a well-understood category and closed the interpretive question. But the 3 omitted lines contain what Sumerian philologists call a count-forward sequence, a specific calendrical formula the Mesopotamians used to project time forward from a fixed anchor point. This formula is not ambiguous. It appears in confirmed astronomical tablets from the same Nippur archive, and in every documented instance it was used to calculate eclipse cycles. Those calculations were accurate. The tablets containing them are housed in the astronomy catalog, not the religious one. BM 74329 uses the same grammatical construction, the same numerical syntax, and the same structural logic as those astronomy tablets. It was classified differently, not because its content is different, but because of the religious language surrounding it. The anchor date encoded in the count-forward sequence corresponds, using standard Sumerian lunar calendar conversion to the Gregorian system, to 2650 BCE. The interval the formula specifies is 4,670 years. That is the first thing the omitted lines contain. But that's only part of it. Immediately following the count-forward sequence, the tablet contains a 6-sign descriptor that Langdon's 1912 translation rendered as the arrival of the heavenly lords, a phrase he treated as standard theological language referring to planetary alignments. Planetary alignment references are common in Mesopotamian religious texts. The translation was not questioned. The RTI scan shows that Langdon misread 2 of the 6 signs. The corrected reading does not say the arrival of the heavenly lords. It says, the return of what was placed beneath. That phrase has a specific technical usage in Sumerian administrative literature. It appears in the Tumul Chronicle in reference to objects ritually buried during temple foundations, intended to be unearthed by a future king as evidence of divine continuity. It appears in an Ur-3 administrative tablet describing the resealing of a storage complex until the count is fulfilled. It is not mystical language. It is logistical language. It describes a deliberate deposit with a scheduled retrieval date. BM 74329 pairs that phrase directly with a count-forward date sequence that ends within the current century. The third omitted line contains 4 cuneiform signs that are not words. They are measurements, 2 angular bearings and 2 distance values expressed in the Sumerian unit, called the baru, equivalent to approximately 10.8 kilometers. Plotted from the documented coordinates of ancient Nippur, those bearings and distances do not scatter. They converge. They point to a single location in the Zagros Mountain range, in what is now Loristan province of western Iran. Something was found at that location in 1961, and then it was filed away and no one went back. In 1961, an Iranian geological survey team conducting mineral assessments in the Zagros highlands logged an anomalous subsurface reading near the Loristan district. The survey report, filed with the Iranian Ministry of Mines, described a regular geometric void, approximately 40 meters below the surface, a chamber-like formation whose walls, according to the survey team's own documentation, showed no natural fracture pattern consistent with limestone Karas formation. The void was not a cave. Caves fracture. Caves follow the path of water through soluble rock. This formation had walls that did not behave that way. The survey team flagged it for follow-up assessment and continued their mineral survey. The follow-up assessment was never conducted, at least not officially. The location of that 1961 anomalous reading cites 2.3 kilometers from the convergence point, calculated from BM 74329's angular bearings, well within the error range of Sumerian baru measurements applied across terrain over 4 millennia of geographical change. And the surface directly above the 1961 void reading contains a flat limestone formation that local villagers in the Loristan region have referred to in oral tradition for as long as regional ethnographers have been documenting the area as the LID. That name appears in a 1934 British Petroleum Geological Survey memo about the Zagros foothills, written decades before any academic attention was paid to the Nippur tablet coordinates. A geological feature does not acquire the name the lid without a reason. If you are watching this channel, you already know that most ancient history content stops at the surface. This channel works from the archive, catalog numbers, dissertation footnotes, geological survey reports filed in ministries that do not have websites. Subscribe now, and every week you will get one more piece of the record that did not disappear. It just got filed somewhere inconvenient. In 2022, a population genetics study from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology analyzed ancient DNA extracted from Zagros highland burial sites dating to between 2500 BCE and 2700 BCE. Among the findings was a statistically anomalous cluster of individuals near the Lauriston region, carrying a mitochondrial haplogroup designated HV1b2, a lineage that does not appear in surrounding highland populations from the same period. It appears earlier in Mesopotamian lowland samples from 3200 BCE, concentrated in the area around Nippur. Then it vanishes from those lowland samples, and it reappears in this specific highland cluster in the Zagros during the same historical window. The BM74329 count-forward sequence begins its projection forward. The Max Planck paper notes the anomaly. It describes the migration pattern as unresolved. It does not connect it to any archaeological site in the Zagros. No follow-up study targeting the Lauriston region has been published. Now, the mainstream explanation for each of these data points deserves to be stated carefully and completely because it is not without merit. Calendrical sequences in Sumerian liturgical texts, when converted across calendar systems, produce numerical outputs that carry enough methodological uncertainty to make any modern date correspondence statistically unreliable. Langdon made transliteration errors throughout his career, and correcting early 20th century cuneiform work rarely produces dramatic revelations. Most corrections are minor and mundane. Geometric voids in Zagros limestone terrain are not inherently unusual, and the 1961 survey team's equipment was not capable of distinguishing a naturally formed chamber from a constructed one with confidence. Population movement in the Zagros highlands during the 3rd millennium BCE is well documented across the region, and a haplogroup cluster in Lauriston is more parsimoniously explained by a small founding population effect than by deliberate organized relocation from Nippur. Each of these responses is legitimate. None of them is fabricated. Careful historians apply exactly this kind of skepticism, and they are right to do so. The one detail this framework cannot account for is the name. The limestone formation above the 1961 void is called the Lid, recorded in a 1934 petroleum memo and preserved in local oral tradition in a region with no documented connection to either British Museum archival research or Sumerian scholarship of any kind. A geological feature does not accumulate that name through coincidence. What BM74329 may be is not a supernatural warning. It may be something more specific, and in some ways more difficult to process. A logistical document. A retrieval notice, composed around 2650 BCE, encoding the location of a sealed deposit and the calendrical formula needed to time its opening correctly. The Anunnaki language surrounding the technical content is the religious container for practical information, the same way every other Sumerian administrative document embeds logistics inside theological framing. The beings described as Anunnaki in the surrounding text may be nothing more than the institutional authority validating the deposit, the way a modern notarized document invokes legal frameworks to establish legitimacy. 3 independent data streams, a corrected translation of a misclassified tablet, a 1961 geological anomaly in western Iran, and a genetic migration pattern that places Nippur origin lineages in the Zagros during the exact historical window the tablet sequence begins, point to the same small area of the Lauriston highlands. No single one of them is conclusive. Together, they describe what Sumerian administrative tradition calls a deposit of account, objects sealed underground with a location record and a retrieval schedule. The count-forward sequence does not produce a single date. It produces a range. Using the most conservative Sumerian to Gregorian conversion methodology currently used in academic chronology, that range opened in 2012 It closes in 2037. The 1961 Iranian Ministry of Mines survey report, including the full subsurface readings from the Lorestan site, was transferred to the Iranian National Archive in Tehran during the administrative reorganization following the 1979 revolution. It is catalogued. It has not been digitized. Under current institutional agreements between Iran and Western academic bodies, foreign researchers cannot access it. The RTI scan of the BM74329 lower register, including the corrected transliteration of the 3 lines Langdon omitted, sits in the British Museum's digital archive behind a credentialed access system with a documented backlog. Dr. Osei's 2009 dissertation, the only document in the academic record that connects the tablet's numerical sequence to a calendrical projection, is held in the University of Chicago's restricted thesis archive. It was never published. Requests for access take between 6 and 18 months to process. The limestone formation in the Lorestan highlands is still there. The void. The 1961 survey team logged 40 meters below it has not been excavated. The tablet that points to it sits in a basement archive in London, its lower register finally readable, its translation still officially incomplete.